The chamber was a hollowed-out asteroid, a relic of a forgotten war, now serving as the neutral heart of the galactic concordat. Its walls, unadorned and gray, absorbed light and sound, creating a perpetual twilight that mirrored the grim mood of its occupants. At the center of this cavernous space, a circular plinth of polished obsidian reflected the holographic forms of the council members, each an emissary of a star-spanning civilization, each bearing the weight of galactic stability on their shoulders. Today, that weight was heavier than it had been in millennia. The source of their collective dread was a single, insignificant vessel, a ghost that had drifted out of the void and into the heart of their most secure trade lane. It was a derelict, a piece of cosmic refuse by all appearances, its hull a patchwork of corroded plates and faded insignias that no one recognized. It was, by all logical assessments, a dead ship, yet it was not. The Cathar Imperator, a being of crystalline structure that shimmered with internal, cold light, broke the tense silence. Its voice was the sound of grinding glaciers, a low, resonant vibration that filled the chamber. The reports remain unchanged. The vessel does not respond to any hails. Its energy signature is a flat line, consistent with a cold, dead reactor. Yet it moves. It maintains its position at the nexus, a silent sentinel of rust and decay, and our most advanced sensor sweeps peel away from its hull like water from oil. The Imperator's crystalline facets shifted, casting fractured light across the obsidian table. We have sent probes. They vanish within a certain proximity, not destroyed, but simply gone. They cease to exist in our reality. Opposite the Imperator, the chitinous form of the Vex Hive matriarch clicked its mandibles, a gesture of deep agitation. Its multifaceted eyes, 1,000 tiny lenses, stared at the holographic representation of the rusty ship suspended above the plinth. This is not possible. A vessel cannot move without propulsion. It cannot defy sensor scans without active countermeasures. This is a paradox, a violation of the known laws. The matriarch's voice was a chorus of whispers, a sibilant hiss that carried the collective anxiety of its entire species. And its origin, this humanity. The archives are sparse, contradictory. A fledgling race, barely interstellar, confined to a single arm of the galaxy. They are not known for such subtleties. A third figure, the ethereal loom, a being of pure energy contained within a shimmering, vaguely humanoid field, pulsed with a soft, violet light. Perhaps we underestimate them. Perhaps the archives are incomplete or deliberately misleading. The loom's voice was a melody of pure tones, a stark contrast to the grating voice of the Cathar and the sibilant whispers of the Vex. We have always dismissed them as primitives, a chaotic species driven by fleeting emotions and a short, brutal lifespan. We saw their expansion as a frantic, desperate grasp for resources, not a calculated strategy. What if we were wrong? What if this vessel is not a derelict but a statement? The Cathar Imperator rotated its crystalline head. A statement of what, Loom? That they can place a piece of cosmic junk in the most critical junction of galactic trade. It has been there for 3 rotations. Commerce is grinding to a halt. Fleets are being rerouted. Fear is spreading. If it is a statement, it is one of chaos, of anarchy. It is the act of a child throwing a stone into a complex machine to see what breaks. Or, the loom countered, its light intensifying, it is the act of a master strategist placing a single, unassuming piece on the board, a piece that changes the entire game. The loom gestured with a tendril of light towards the holographic ship. Look at it. It is an affront to our sensibilities. We who build ships of polished chrome and crystalline lattices of living metal and harness starlight. We see this rust bucket, and we are repulsed. We see weakness, decay, and failure. And that is why we cannot comprehend it. Our pride, our aesthetics, our very understanding of what constitutes power blinds us. The Vex Hive matriarch rustled its chitinous plates. Pride does not explain the vanishing probes. It does not explain the defiance of physics. We have brought our finest minds to bear on this anomaly, our greatest technicians, our most brilliant physicists. They all return with the same answer. It is impossible. The ship should not be there. It should not be able to do what it is doing. The matriarch's whispers grew more urgent. And what of the whispers from the outer rim? The traders, the scavengers, they speak of other human vessels. Not many, but they are there. They are described as unassuming, utilitarian, easily dismissed, until they are not. The chamber fell silent again, the weight of the unknown pressing down on them. They were the masters of the galaxy, the architects of an age of peace and prosperity built on a foundation of logic, reason, and overwhelming technological superiority. They had faced down cosmic horrors and ancient empires. They had navigated the treacherous currents of galactic politics for eons. And now they were being held hostage by a single, silent, rusty ship from a species they had barely considered worthy of a footnote in their grand histories. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken fears. What if they had been wrong about humanity? What if, while they were polishing their chrome fleets and debating the finer points of aesthetic engineering, this upstart species had been quietly mastering a different kind of power, a power that did not announce itself with bright lights and grand pronouncements, a power that hid in plain sight, cloaked in rust and decay. The Imperator's internal light dimmed, a sign of deep contemplation. We have been patient, we have been cautious. Perhaps it is time for a more direct approach, a show of force. We will dispatch a fleet, a small one but powerful enough to make our intentions clear. We will surround the vessel, we will sever it from whatever impossible power source it is using, and we will have our answers. The loom pulsed a deep, warning crimson. And if that is what they are waiting for, if this is a trap, we know nothing of their military capabilities. This could be a sacrificial pawn designed to lure us into a conflict we do not understand. An act of aggression against a silent, non-responsive vessel could be seen by some as unprovoked. Unprovoked, the Vex matriarch hissed. They have blockaded the Nexus. They have sown chaos in the markets. They have made a mockery of the Concordat's authority. Every moment we hesitate is a victory for them. It shows the galaxy that we are weak, that we can be defied by a single piece of primitive junk. The debate raged on, a cycle of fear, arrogance, and uncertainty. They were trapped in a web of their own making, their rigid adherence to logic and protocol leaving them unable to comprehend an act that seemed to defy both. They analyzed the ship's trajectory, its composition, its every-minute detail, searching for a pattern, a clue, a weakness. But there was nothing. It was just a rusty ship, a silent, inscrutable monument to their own ignorance, and with every passing moment the fear grew. The fear of the unknown, the fear of a species that did not play by their rules, the fear of what would happen when the silence was finally broken. The decision was made, a compromise born of fear and frustration. A fleet would be sent, but it would be a diverse one, a joint task force of the Concordat's finest. Cathar cruisers of crystalline perfection, Vex hive ships of organic, chitinous horror, and loom vessels of pure, shimmering energy. They would not attack. They would contain. They would project a power that was undeniable, a statement of their own. They would show this upstart humanity the true meaning of galactic power. And so the fleets gathered, a glittering armada of chrome and light and living metal, a testament to the might of the Concordat. They moved in perfect formation, a symphony of controlled power, and they converged on the Nexus, on the single, silent, rusty ship that had brought the galaxy to a standstill. As the Concordat fleet warped into the system, a breathtaking display of controlled violence, they found the rusty ship exactly where it had been, unmoved, unresponsive. The sheer scale of the assembled fleet was enough to cow a lesser species into submission. It was a hammer forged to shatter stars, and it was now aimed at a single, insignificant nail. The commanders of the fleet, a triumvirate of the Concordat's most seasoned veterans, watched from the bridge of their respective flagships, their minds a whirlwind of anticipation and anxiety. The Cathar Admiral, a being whose crystalline form was even more ancient and imposing than the Imperator's, issued the first command. Its voice, like its superiors, was the grinding of glaciers. Open a channel, all frequencies, all languages. This is Admiral Cathar of the Concordat Joint Task Force. Identify yourselves, state your intentions. You are in violation of Concordat law. You are obstructing a vital trade route. Power down your vessel and prepare to be boarded. The silence that followed was absolute. The rusty ship did not respond. Its energy signature remained a flat line. It just floated there, a silent, defiant island in a sea of overwhelming power. The Vex Admiral, a creature of writhing tentacles and a single malevolent eye, hissed in frustration. They mock us. They sit in their metal shell and they mock us. The Loom Admiral, a being of pure golden light, pulsed with a calming aura. Patience. They are testing us. They want to see how we will react. The Cathar Admiral was not known for its patience. We have given them their chance. Deploy the interdiction field. Let us see how their impossible ship fares when it is cut off from the very fabric of spacetime. The command was given, and the fleet began to move. Specialized vessels, the pride of the Concordat's engineering corps, moved into position, their massive energy projectors humming to life. A net of pure energy, a shimmering cage that could trap a star, began to form around the rusty ship. And then something happened. It was not an explosion. It was not a weapon firing. It was a voice. A single, calm, human voice that echoed in the minds of every being in the Concordat fleet, from the lowliest drone to the most exalted admiral. It was not a broadcast. It was not a telepathic message. It was something else. Something that bypassed all their technology, all their defenses, and spoke directly to their consciousness. "This is Captain Eva Rostova of the human vessel Wanderer. We mean you no harm. We are waiting." The voice was unsettling. It was calm, devoid of fear or aggression. It was the voice of someone who was in complete control of the situation, a situation in which they were surrounded by a fleet that could annihilate their entire solar system without breaking a sweat. The Cathar Admiral's crystalline form flickered with confusion. "Waiting? Waiting for what? You are in violation of our laws. You have disrupted the galactic order." The voice of Captain Rostova returned, as calm and measured as before. "We are aware of the disruption. It was necessary. We needed your attention. We needed to be sure that we were speaking to the true leadership of the Concordat, not just a regional power." The Vex Admiral's single eye narrowed. "You have our attention, human. Now explain yourselves before we lose our patience and turn your rusty ship into its component atoms." There was a pause, a moment of silence that was more profound than any that had come before. And then the voice returned, and with it a new element, a feeling, a sense of sadness. "We came to warn you. We came to offer our help." The Loom Admiral pulsed with a soft, questioning light. "Warn us of what? Help us with what? We are the Concordat. We are the masters of this galaxy. We do not need help from a fledgling species in a rusty ship." "You are not the masters of this galaxy," the human voice replied, and for the first time there was a hint of something else in its tone. A chilling, ancient weariness. "You are the inheritors, the caretakers, and you are in grave danger." And then the rusty ship changed. It was not a dramatic transformation. There was no flash of light, no sudden shift in its structure. It was more subtle than that. The rust, it seemed to recede. The corroded plates, they seemed to heal. The faded insignias, they began to glow with a soft, internal light. The ship, the dead, derelict piece of junk, was waking up. Its energy signature, once a flat line, began to climb, a steady, inexorable ascent that defied all known models of power generation. It was not a reactor coming online. It was something else, something ancient, something vast. And then the ship opened. A section of the hull, a section that had seemed as solid and corroded as the rest, simply dissolved, revealing a chamber within. And in that chamber stood a single figure, a human, a woman in a simple, utilitarian jumpsuit, her face etched with a weariness that seemed to transcend a single lifetime. It was Captain Eva Rostova. She was not wearing a helmet. She was breathing the vacuum of space as if it were the air of her homeworld. The admirals of the Concordat fleet stared in stunned silence. This was impossible. It was a violation of all known laws of biology and physics. And then the true revelation came. It was not just the captain, it was the ship. The Wanderer. It was not a machine. It was alive. The rust was not decay. It was a chrysalis, a protective shell, and it had just been shed. The ship beneath was a thing of impossible beauty. A seamless, organic-looking vessel of a material that seemed to drink the light of the surrounding stars. It pulsed with a soft, internal energy, a living, breathing entity that was now fully awake. And the voice of Captain Rostova echoed in their minds once more. No longer just a voice, but a presence, a force of will that was as undeniable as a supernova. "We are the Watchers, the Guardians. We have been for a very, very long time, and we have come to warn you of the silence that is coming." The chamber of the Galactic Concordat was no longer a place of debate and uncertainty. It was a place of stunned, horrified silence. The holographic representation of the rusty ship had been replaced by the image of the transformed Wanderer, a vessel of such impossible grace and power that it made their own mighty fleets look like children's toys. The reports from the admirals at the Nexus had been confirmed, reconfirmed, and then confirmed again. The human captain, Eva Rostova, had stood in the vacuum of space, unprotected, and had spoken T. Owe them not with technology, but with the sheer force of her will. The ship was not a machine, but a living entity, and the energy signature it was now emitting was off the scale. It was a level of power that the Concordat had only theorized about, a power that could, in theory, unmake stars. The Cathar Imperator, for the first time in its long existence, felt a sensation that was alien to its crystalline being. It was the cold, sharp sting of fear. A living ship, a being that can survive in the void, a power source that defies physics. Who are these humans? What are they? The Vex Hive Matriarch's whispers were a frantic, chaotic buzz. They called themselves Watchers, Guardians. They spoke of a coming silence. This is not a fledgling species. This is something else, something ancient, something that has been hiding in the dark, watching us. The loom, its form a turbulent, swirling vortex of violet light, pulsed with a deep, resonant tone of awe. We were so arrogant. We judged them by their technology, by the crude, primitive vessels they sent out into the void. We never considered that their greatest technology was not in their machines, but in themselves. They have evolved. They have become something more than flesh and blood. Captain Eva Rostova had been invited to address the council. It was not a request. It was a plea. The human captain had accepted, and her image now appeared on the obsidian plinth, a stark, simple figure against the backdrop of her impossible ship. She was no longer wearing the utilitarian jumpsuit. She was now clad in a simple black uniform that seemed to absorb the light around her. Her face was calm, her eyes ancient and filled with a profound sadness. "We are humanity," she began, her voice echoing in the minds of the council members, a gentle yet irresistible force. "Or what is left of us, what we became. We did not choose this path, it was forced upon us. A long time ago our species reached a crossroads. We could have embraced the machine as you have. We could have built empires of chrome and steel, but we chose a different path. We chose to look inward. To unlock the potential that was sleeping within our own biology, within our own consciousness." She gestured to the image of the Wanderer. "This ship, she is not a machine. She is my sister, my companion. We grew together from the same genetic seed. She is an extension of my will, and I am an extension of hers. We are two parts of a single whole. This is how we travel the stars, not by conquering the laws of physics, but by becoming them." The Cathar Imperator's internal light flickered. You weaponized life itself. You turned your own biology into a tool of power." "Not power," Captain Rostova corrected, her voice gentle but firm. "Responsibility. We did not seek this. We did not desire it. But we saw what was coming. We saw the great filter that awaits all intelligent life. And we knew that we had to prepare. We had to become something that could withstand the storm." The Vex Hive matriarch's whispers were laced with a new emotion, dawning horror. The coming silence. What is it? What did you see?" Captain Rostova's eyes seemed to look past the council members, past the chamber, into the vast, cold emptiness of space. "There is a presence in the void, an intelligence. It is ancient, vast, and hungry. It is not alive in the way that we understand life. It is a force of nature, a cosmic immune system, and it sees life, organized, intelligent life, as of a disease, a plague to be cleansed." A cold dread settled over the chamber. The council members, the masters of the galaxy, the beings who had believed themselves to be the apex of creation, suddenly felt very, very small. "It is a wave of nothingness," Captain Rostova continued, her voice a low, somber whisper. "It moves from galaxy to galaxy and it erases. It does not destroy. It does not conquer. It simply undoes. It unravels the very fabric of reality, one star system at a time. And it is coming here. We have been tracking it for a very long time. We have been running from it, trying to stay one step ahead of the silence. But we are tired of running. We came to you because you are the first civilization we have encountered that might have a chance to stand with us, to fight." The chamber was silent. The weight of her words was crushing, a physical force that seemed to suck the very air from the room. The galactic peace they had so carefully constructed, the prosperity they had so proudly built, was all a fragile, temporary illusion, a sandcastle built on the shores of a cosmic ocean that was about to rise. The loom, its light a pale, trembling silver, was the first to speak. Why did you not come to us sooner? Why the deception, the rusty ship, the silence?" Captain Rostova's gaze returned to the council, her eyes filled with a deep, ancient sorrow. "Because we had to be sure. We have seen aught. Her civilizations fall. We have seen them crumble in the face of fear. We have seen them turn on each other, their grand alliances dissolving into petty squabbles as the end approached. We had to know if you were different. We had to know if you had the fortitude, the unity to face what is coming. The rusty ship was a test of your patience, your wisdom, your courage. It was a mirror, and we wanted to see what you would see in its reflection. Ugliness, weakness, or a mystery to be solved with caution and respect." She paused, and a flicker of something that might have been a smile touched her lips. "You did not destroy the ship. You hesitated, you debated, you chose caution over aggression, you chose to understand. And that is why we are here, that is why we are finally breaking our silence." The Cathar Imperator's crystalline form seemed to bow, a gesture of profound respect. We are humbled, Captain Rostova. We were arrogant, blind. We ask for your forgiveness and your guidance." The Vex Hive matriarch's sibilant whispers were now a chorus of unified, resolute voices. "We will stand with you. We will fight. The Vex are not afraid of the dark." The loom pulsed with a brilliant, golden light, a beacon of hope in the twilight chamber. "We are the Concordat. We are a union of 1,000 worlds, a billion voices. We will not be silenced. We will rage against the dying of the light." Captain Rostova nodded, a single, solemn gesture of acceptance. "Then our long watch is finally over. The time for hiding is past. The time for fighting has begun." The chamber, once a place of fear and division, was now a crucible of unity, of a shared purpose forged in the face of an existential threat. The rusty ship, the unassuming derelict that had sown so much chaos and confusion, had become a symbol of the hidden strength of a species they had so foolishly underestimated, a symbol of the power that lay not in chrome and steel, but in the indomitable will of life itself, and a symbol of the terrible, awe-inspiring truth that the galaxy was far larger, far older, and far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The humans had not come to conquer them. They had not come to challenge them. They had come to save them, and in doing so they had shattered the Concordat's comfortable, predictable world forever. The age of peace was over. The age of survival had begun. The alliance was forged, not in the sterile halls of diplomacy, but in the shared, cold terror of the abyss. The Concordat, once a fractious collection of competing interests, was now a single, unified entity, its vast resources and diverse talents pledged to a single, desperate cause. The humans, the silent watchers who had lurked in the shadows of the galaxy for untold millennia, now stepped into the light, their small number belying their immense power. Captain Eva Rostova and the crew of the Wanderer, along with a handful of other living ships that emerged from the hidden corners of the void, became the linchpin of the new galactic strategy. They were a stark contrast to the rigid, hierarchical military structures of the Concordat. The humans did not have ranks, or titles, or a chain of command. They were a family, a close-knit, telepathically linked community of beings who had transcended the limitations of individuality. They moved with a fluid, intuitive grace that baffled and amazed their new allies. Their ships, the living, sentient vessels that were as much a part of them as their own limbs, were a source of endless fascination and fear. The Concordat's finest engineers and scientists studied them, trying to comprehend their impossible biology, their organic technology, their power source that seemed to be drawn from the very fabric of spacetime. But it was like a primitive trying to understand a god. The humans were a living embodiment of a future that the Concordat had never even dared to imagine. The knowledge they shared was a torrent of paradigm-shattering revelations. They had a map of the galaxy that was not based on stellar cartography, but on the emotional resonance of star systems. They could sense the presence of life, of consciousness, across vast distances. They could communicate not with words, but with pure, unadulterated meaning, a language of the soul that transcended all barriers of culture and biology. And they had a deep, intimate understanding of the enemy, the great silence that was rolling towards them like a cosmic tide. They called it the unraveling, a force that did not consume but erased. It was a slow, creeping entropy, a wave of anti-creation that nullified the laws of physics, that unwound the very threads of existence. It had no leader, no army, no motivation that could be understood in conventional terms. It was simply a force of cosmic balance, a reaction to the improbable, audacious complexity of life. And it was getting closer. The first signs were subtle, a distant star that simply winked out of existence, a scientific outpost that went silent, its last transmission a garbled cry of confusion as their instruments failed and their reality began to dissolve. The humans felt each loss as a physical blow, a tremor in the collective consciousness of the galaxy. The Concordat, for all its advanced technology, was blind to the true nature of the threat. Their sensors registered nothing. Their probes returned with no data. It was like trying to fight a ghost. But the humans, they could see it, they could feel it, they could sing to it. That was perhaps the most unsettling revelation of all. The humans did not fight with weapons in the traditional sense. Their living ships did not fire lasers or missiles. They sang. They projected a wave of pure, focused consciousness, a symphony of will that could reinforce reality. They could create a bubble of existence, a sanctuary of being in the face of the encroaching nothingness. It was not a weapon of destruction, but a tool of preservation. They were not warriors. They were lifeboats. The Concordat, in its desperation, adapted. Their fleets, once instruments of conquest and intimidation, were repurposed. They became escorts, guardians for the human ships. They would engage the echoes of the unraveling, the twisted, nightmarish creatures of warped spacetime that were sometimes spawned in its wake, while the humans did their strange, silent work, singing their songs of defiance against the encroaching silence. It was a strange, desperate war. A war fought not for territory or resources, but for the right to exist. The grand, gleaming fleets of the Cathar, the chitinous swarms of the Vex, the ethereal lightships of the Loom, all huddled around the small, organic vessels of the humans, a fragile, defiant island of life in an ocean of encroaching nothingness. The admirals of the Concordat, once proud, arrogant masters of their own destiny, now took their orders from the calm, sad-eyed humans who spoke in their minds and sang to the stars. And in the heart of this desperate struggle, a new understanding was born. The Cathar, with their rigid logic and crystalline minds, learned the value of intuition, of a faith that transcended data and calculation. The Vex, with their hive-mind collectivism, learned the power of the individual will, the spark of unique consciousness that the humans cherished above all else. And the Loom, the beings of pure energy, came to understand that the physical world, the world of flesh and blood and rust and decay, was not a prison, but a canvas, a place of profound, fragile beauty. They were no longer just allies. They were students, and their teachers were the strange, sad, powerful beings who had once been a footnote in their histories, the beings who had come to them in a rusty ship and offered them a terrible, beautiful gift, a reason to fight. But the unraveling was relentless. It was a tide that could not be turned back, only delayed. For every star system they saved, another was lost. For every world they shielded with their songs of existence, a dozen more fell silent. The galaxy was shrinking, the darkness was closing in, and the humans, they were growing weary. Their songs were becoming fainter, their light dimmer. They were pouring their very life force into the fight, and there was only so much they had to give. It was on the bridge of the Wanderer, in the heart of a nebula that was bleeding reality, that the final, terrible truth was revealed. Captain Eva Rostova stood before a holographic map of the galaxy, a map that was slowly, inexorably turning black. The leaders of the Concordat were with her, their forms grim and shadowed in the faint, pulsing light of the living ship. "We can't win," the Cathar Imperator stated, its voice a flat, dead grinding of crystal. "We can only postpone the inevitable." "There is one last hope," Captain Rostova said, her voice a faint whisper in their minds. A long shot, a gamble that our ancestors prepared for an eternity ago." She pointed to a spot on the map, a spot that was far beyond the edge of the galaxy in the vast, empty expanse of intergalactic space. "There is a place, a sanctuary, a new beginning." The Vex Hive matriarch's whispers were a chorus of confusion. "A new galaxy? We cannot travel that far. It would take millions of years." "We would not be traveling through space," Captain Rostova explained, her eyes distant, her mind already far, far away. "We would be traveling through time." She then revealed the final and most profound secret of the humans. The Wanderer and its sister ships were not just vessels. They were seeds, arcs. They contained the genetic code, the collective consciousness of not just humanity, but of every species they had ever encountered, every form of life they had ever deemed worthy of saving. They were a library of life, a final, desperate act of preservation. "Our plan was never to defeat the unraveling," Captain Rostova said, her voice filled with an infinite, heartbreaking weariness. "That is like trying to defeat death itself. Our plan was to survive it, to find a new universe, a new beginning where life could start again." A stunned silence filled the bridge. The sheer scale of the human plan, the sheer audacity of their ambition, was overwhelming. They were not just fighting for their own survival. They were fighting for the survival of life itself. "But the cost," the Loom pulsed, its light a faint, trembling question. "To travel through time, to break the most fundamental law of the universe, what would it take?" Captain Rostova turned to face them, and in her eyes they saw the terrible, beautiful truth. "It would take everything. The combined life force of every human, of every living ship. We would have to burn ourselves as fuel. A final, glorious supernova of consciousness that would punch a hole in reality and carry the seeds of life to a new dawn." She looked at them, her allies, her friends, the beings she had come to respect and to love. "But we are not enough. Our light is fading. We do not have the strength to make the final journey alone. We need your help. We need your life force. We need you two to sing with us, to add your voices to the final song." The choice was laid before them, stark and terrible. They could stay and fight, a glorious, hopeless last stand against the encroaching darkness. Or they could join the humans in their final, desperate gamble. They could sacrifice their own existence, their own reality, for the chance that life itself might continue somewhere, sometime. There was no debate. There was no hesitation. In the face of the ultimate end, there was only one choice. The Cathar Imperator's crystalline form began to glow with a fierce, brilliant light. Our logic dictates that this is the only viable path. The Cathar will sing. The Vex Hive matriarch's whispers rose into a single, powerful chorus. The Hive is one. We will add our voice to the great song. The loom's form exploded into a sunburst of pure, golden energy. We are light. We will not go gentle into that good night. We will burn with you. And so the final plan was made. The remnants of the Concordat fleet, a ghost of its former glory, gathered around the human ships. The survivors of a dozen species, the last remnants of a dying galaxy, prepared for their final act. They were no longer Cathar or Vex or Loom or human. They were one. A single unified consciousness, a choir of 1 billion souls, ready to sing their final, defiant song against the silence. The Wanderer moved to the heart of the fleet, its organic hull pulsing with a soft, mournful light. Captain Eva Rostova stood on the bridge, her eyes closed, her mind connected to every living being in the fleet. She was the conductor of this final, desperate symphony. And then she began to sing. It was a song of impossible beauty, a song of love and loss, of hope and despair, of a universe that was both terrible and beautiful. It was a song of every life that had ever been lived, every dream that had ever been dreamed. And as her song filled the void, the other voices joined in. The crystalline harmonies of the Cathar, the buzzing, insected chorus of the Vex, the pure, ethereal tones of the Loom, 1 billion voices, 1 billion souls singing as one. The energy began to build, a crescendo of pure, focused consciousness that was brighter than 1,000 suns. The fabric of spacetime began to thin, to stretch, to tear, a wound in reality, a gateway to somewhere else. And as the light grew, as the song reached its final, heartbreaking crescendo, a new voice joined the chorus. It was not a voice of the Concordat. It was not a voice of the humans. It was something else, something ancient, something vast. It was a voice that echoed from the gateway they had created, a voice that was not a sound but a feeling, a sense of welcome, of homecoming. The gateway stabilized, no longer a violent tear in reality, but a smooth, shimmering portal of impossible colors. And through that portal they could see not a new universe, but the old one, their own universe. But it was different. It was young. It was filled with the raw, chaotic energy of creation. It was the universe as it had been billions of years ago, before the first stars had been born. And the voice, the ancient, welcoming voice, it spoke to them, not in their minds, but in their souls. We have been waiting for you, little ones. We have been so lonely. It was not the unraveling. It was not an enemy. It was the universe itself, the consciousness of the cosmos, a being of such scale and power that it was beyond their comprehension. And it was alive. You have fought so bravely, the voice continued, a wave of pure, unconditional love that washed over them, healing their weary souls. You have held back the silence for so long, but you do end. Ought have to fight anymore. The cycle is complete. It is time to come home. The unraveling was not an act of malice. It was a process, a cosmic winter, a time of fallowness before the spring of a new creation. The universe was breathing, and they had reached the end of an exhalation. The choice was no longer about survival. It was about ascension, about becoming part of something larger, about returning to the source. Captain Eva Rostova opened her eyes, and for the first time in millennia she smiled. A real, genuine smile of peace and acceptance. She looked at her friends, her allies, her family, and in their minds she whispered a single, final word. Together. And as one, the fleet, the choir, the single, unified soul of a dying galaxy, sailed into the light not as an escape, but as a homecoming. They did not travel to a new universe. They became it. Their consciousness, their life force, their love, their hope became the seeds of the next creation. The memories of the Cathar became the laws of physics. The unity of the Vex became the bonds of gravity. The light of the Loom became the fire of the first stars. And the indomitable, adaptable, endlessly compassionate spirit of humanity, it became the spark of life itself. The rusty ship, the Wanderer, was the last to enter the portal. For a single fleeting moment, it was just a ship again, a small, insignificant vessel against the backdrop of a new, dawning creation. And then it too dissolved into light, its final, silent song a lullaby for a universe that was about to be born. The silence was not an end. It was a beginning. And in the heart of that new beginning, a single, beautiful, impossible idea took root. The idea that even in the face of the ultimate darkness, life finds a way. And that sometimes the greatest weapon is not a sword, but a song of unity, a song of hope, a song that can create a universe. And in that new universe, a billion years later, on a small, blue world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star, a new species would look up at the night sky and wonder if they were alone. And the universe would smile, because it knew the answer. It had been waiting for them all along. It was, after all, made of them. Their courage, their sacrifice, their love, the echo of their final, beautiful song, a song that would resonate through all of eternity. The story of the rusty ship that had saved not just a galaxy, but reality itself. The ultimate and most beautiful human Fallenian story ever told. The story of how humanity and its friends became gods, not gods of power or of wrath, but gods of creation, gods of life, gods of hope, and the universe they created. It was a good one. It was a universe that was worthy of their sacrifice. It was a home, finally, a home.